Shalom, family. Hope you're all doing well. Well, because of the government shutdown, the longer this thing drags on, the less likely people are going to show up for work. And that's what's happening. So, more and more air traffic controllers, TSA officers, it doesn't matter. The entire staff at the airport, there is shortages nationwide. They have made a list of 40 different airport locations in the country that are canceling flights because they just don't have enough people working to handle everything. So that adds up to thousands of flights being canceled. And I would imagine it's probably going to be even more canceled next week and the following week. So if you have to go anywhere, make sure you check before you leave your house. Hopefully, you won't have to fly. I think this is probably the most unsafe time to take flights when you know people are not there and these airports are not fully staffed. So just be careful if you have to take flights anywhere, because I know sometimes you just can't avoid it and you do what you have to do. So I'm going to share my screen so you can hear what they're saying. This is really a big deal because this country is almost in its biggest travel season of the year, which is Thanksgiving and Christmas. And if they don't get back to work, which I don't think they will, I don't think they're going to open up the government. I just don't. If they don't do it, you're going to have mobs and mobs of people down at the airport. It's going to just become a stalemate. Nothing is going to move. It's just going to be too many people. But we shall see. But this might not be, canceling Christmas and Thanksgiving might not be such a bad idea under these circumstances, for real. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. Oh, 1 second here. Rid of that. Okay. Please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Thank you.
No one planning a flight wants to hear. The FAA announcing plans to cut thousands of flights at major U.S. airports over air traffic safety concerns as the longest government shutdown in history continues with no end in sight. And tonight we're learning travelers leaving from California and heading to California could be more impacted than travelers in any other state. Eyewitness News reporter Liz Nagy live now at LAX with the reasons why. Liz.
Mark, things here at airports could get chaotic quickly. This change could ground as many as 4,500 flights per day, impacting hundreds of thousands of passengers.
The roar of jet engines over LAX and America's busiest airports is about to quiet to a hush. At the order of the Federal Aviation Administration,
we have decided that a 10% reduction in scheduled capacity would be appropriate to, again, continue to take the pressure off of our controllers.
Overworked and now broke from 6 weeks without government pay, already understaffed air traffic controllers, the FAA says, can no longer safely manage the airspace as it is. Tonight, the Transportation Secretary says they're hitting the brakes on air capacity.
Well, I think it's going to lead to more cancellations. That we're going to work with the airlines to do this in a systematic way.
Now they are left scrambling, trying to figure out how they are going to do this in less than 48 hours.
No state will feel the impact more than California. It's home to 5 of the 40 airports that will operate under reduced air traffic: LAX, Ontario, San Diego, San Francisco, and Oakland. At LAX, delays have already started to light up, and passengers are making alternative plans.
I haven't even booked a return trip because of that.
I was probably going to have some issues coming back from London, so I figured, you know what, let me just avoid it and stay home and cancel that meeting.
Now, 3 weeks out from what's historically the busiest travel day of the year, air traffic is already buckling under the pressure of the longest government shutdown ever.
Today, people seem very tolerant. Give it a few weeks, give it the Thanksgiving holidays, we'll see how it looks.
Now, as airlines are trying to quickly navigate all these changes, Frontier Airlines is saying tonight that passengers should perhaps look into buying backup tickets. United CEO says that passengers can get a full refund, even passengers with a basic economy ticket. But the CEO says long-haul international flights and flights between United hubs won't be affected by all of this. We have a full list of all 40 airports that will see these changes on our website, abc7.com. We're live at LAX tonight. Liz Nagy, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Okay, Liz, thank you.
If you have flights planned or know someone who does, this will impact you. The FAA planning to reduce flights by 10% at 40 major airports.
When we see pressures building in these 40 markets, we just can't ignore it, and we're not going to wait for a safety problem to truly manifest itself when the early indicators are telling us we can take action today to prevent, things from deteriorating.
So think about this. The decision could cut thousands of flights per day. The restrictions will go into effect Friday morning. Now, right now, we don't know which airports will be affected, but the FAA is saying that will be announced tomorrow. This all comes, of course, after Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said earlier this week that the FAA will be forced to shut down the airspace in some areas if the shutdown continues into next week.
Airlines for America, a trade association representing major U.S. airlines, says it is working to understand details of the mandate and will try to mitigate impact to passengers and shippers. And again, as we just said, we're going to find out tomorrow if any of the airports in our area will be on this list. Let's go to Air 7 and Chris Christie over Burbank Airport. Chris, this is all happening right before the big Thanksgiving Day holiday travel rush.
Yeah, that's right, Colleen. It's unclear whether our airspace will be affected, whether Burbank, as you can see here, we're over Burbank right now, possibly one of the airports that could be affected as early as Friday. It would be logistically very complicated for airlines to reconnect all of these flights within 48 hours. Most likely, if we're talking about a 10% reduction of 45,000 flights nationwide, you're talking about 4,500 possible cancellations nationwide. Again, a lot of those flights resulting in connecting flights that must be canceled as well, and very hard to see how you would implement that within 24 hours. Again, airlines are just finding out about this now and won't even know which airports will be affected until tomorrow. So realistically, they would only have about 24 hours to implement these cancellations. Again, all of this appears to be somewhat half-baked, we're being told. They are still coming up with an actual plan that isn't even being announced till tomorrow. So again, lots of pieces to fall into place. This is taking place at some point in the next several days, as soon as possibly Friday morning. So a lot to be determined here. Of course, we'll continue to keep you posted. Reporting live from Air 7, I'm Chris Christie, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Chris, thank you. Of course, we will continue to follow this story throughout the afternoon, and we will have more on what this means for you on Eyewitness News and World News Tonight with David Muir.
What are the 40 high-volume markets that they're going to cut 10% of air traffic to beginning Friday? Hi, my name is Marcus. I'm an air traffic controller, and I try and demystify air traffic control. If you've been on the aviation side of TikTok at all today, you've seen these headlines, 10% of flights are going to be cut. And the Department of Transportation is selling this as, since there aren't going to be a lot of controllers next week, theoretically, they're going to cut down on the amount of flights so that the controllers that do show up to work are not oversaturated. It's a noble intention, but what airports will be affected? In the United States, the national airspace system, there's a thing called a Core 30, the Core 30 airports. And Core 30 airports basically are where a majority of airline operations fly into or out of. Their major hubs, their major distribution centers. And while the Department of Transportation hasn't said what airports will be affected by this 10% reduction in flights, I'm going to bet my paycheck that I'm getting right now, which is $0, that the core 30 airports will be included plus 10 more. So if you have a flight from any one of these airports, you have a 90% chance of being on time. Atlanta, Boston, Baltimore, Charlotte Douglas, DCA, Denver, DFW, Detroit, Newark, Fort Lauderdale, Honolulu, Washington Dulles, Bush, Kennedy, Vegas, Los Angeles, LaGuardia, Orlando, Chicago, Memphis, Miami, Minneapolis, Chicago, Philadelphia, Phoenix, San Diego, Seattle, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, and Tampa. If you have a flight from any one of these airports, I would be sure to be signed up for your airline's notifications, because if your flight gets moved or delayed, that's going to be like the first way that you will know that your flight is delayed. Some other airports that I could see being included in this core 30 plus 10 are Austin Bergstrom International Airport. I don't know, I just got a feeling they're really busy, so I could see how 10% of flights there may help. Maybe John Wayne or Santa Barbara, somewhere in California. Maybe Houston Hobby, I'm not entirely sure, but Southwest flies a lot of planes in there. I don't know. Of course, this is all speculative. It could be 40 completely random airports, but I doubt it will be. Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and don't forget to follow for more.
The longest shutdown we've seen. Millions of federal workers are 6 weeks in without getting paid. And the impacts are intensifying. We have learned today that the FAA is cutting down on air traffic, and Las Vegas could be impacted.
Absolutely, Trish. I mean, of course, you know that many people here in Southern Nevada, a big question that they have is what's going to be that impact, especially when it comes to traveling. So as you just mentioned, we are here at Harry Reid International Airport, where earlier this afternoon, we actually heard from the Federal Aviation Administration. They were announcing that there's going to be a 10% cut to air traffic for 40 high-volume markets throughout the entire country, starting as early as this Friday morning. So again, we've already seen some of those impacts when it comes to travel across many different airports all over the country. But now we're wondering what's going to happen here locally. So the move is aimed at maintaining safety during the ongoing government shutdown as air traffic controllers continue to work without pay, with some calling out of work. FAA Administrator Brian Bedford says the agency is taking early action to prevent things from deteriorating. He and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy plan to meet with airline executives later today to determine how to implement the reduction safely. Now, again, we don't know that exact list yet. All we know is that there are 40 of those top high-volume markets that will be impacted. But when we look at some of the busiest airports in the country, based on passenger traffic, Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas ranks 8th, according to Airports Council international data that was released back in 2024. Now, you can also see the other major hubs across the country that could be impacted if the FAA's flight reductions are implemented. So, of course, once we heard of this announcement from the FAA, we reached back out to Harry Reid International Airport, and in a response, they told us that we are aware of the FAA's announcement regarding a planned 10% reduction in air traffic beginning Friday, November 7th, and we are awaiting additional information from the agency. As always, flight delays or cancellations elsewhere in the country may still impact travel nationwide. So, of course, there's still a lot of uncertainties, and we're still trying to piece together how much this will actually impact us here, of course. But from this reduction in air traffic to also families who are struggling to put food on their tables, Trisha, we're seeing this is impacting us across the entire board.
Planning to fly this weekend, you might want to hold off or at least check your flight first. The Federal Aviation Administration says it could cut flights by 10% at 40 major airports starting Friday if the government shutdown continues. Since the shutdown began, there have been more than 400 staffing shortages at FAA facilities nationwide, leading to delays and concerns about controller fatigue. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says the move is data-driven, but it could still mean thousands of canceled flights across the nation. The FAA will meet Wednesday night to discuss how to implement these cuts, and the full list of impacted airports will be released on Thursday. Oh, and get this, the reductions won't just affect commercial flights. Space launches could be restricted too.
Get ready to see more canceled signs on airport departure boards across this country now that the FAA is requiring airlines to slash flying by 10% in 40 high-volume markets. The airlines learning about this about the same time the public is. Those plans are being put together, but it will be likely thousands of flights every day during the shutdown. Now, the FAA says this is because The strain of the shutdown is adding pressure and fatigue on the air traffic controllers that are working. We've seen sick calls amongst controllers surge as they've worked now for over a month without pay. They are poised to miss their second pay period next week because of the shutdown. That has led to challenges. Phoenix seeing delays of more than 3 hours, for example, on some days because there aren't enough controllers in the air traffic control tower at this airport. Bottom line for flyers, the airlines are going to start notifying thousands of people that their flights have been canceled going into a busy weekend. They will try to rebook them as best they can, but for some folks, this will be disruptive to their travel plans.
If more is required, or if we see maybe we've overcorrected, we can certainly take some of the mitigation out.
But again, we thought 10% was the right number based on the pressure that we were seeing. Yes?
Because I look at Politico, can you speak a little more to the 40 markets? Are they the busiest markets, or is there some other metric you're using to determine which ones they are?
So,
and are you going to release the names?
We'd like to brief our aviation users with more of these specifics, but yes, we will publish the markets that will be affected, and of course, airlines will be publishing to their customers their implementation of these processes.
Are you going to release the names of the markets?
They'll be released tomorrow. What I want to be clear on, though, is the NAS is safe. These are proactive measures that we're taking to ensure that we can guarantee the American public that the NAS is operating at the highest levels of safety.
All right, listen up if you're flying this weekend. We will learn tomorrow morning the list of airports that will be impacted by that big announcement by the FAA today to pare down flights because of the government shutdown. SFO here likely on that list.
The FAA says it will be cutting the number of flights in what it calls high traffic parts of the country starting Friday morning. That means a 10% reduction in capacity at 40 locations. SFO likely to fall into that category, according to a spokesperson here. Federal officials are pointing directly to what's happening with air traffic controllers, that they will have been working unpaid since October 1st. Some have resorted to calling out sick because they are taking on other jobs. It's now the carriers, those airliners, that will have to figure out how to make those reductions. We talked to an aviation expert tonight who says that could mean cutting the least profitable routes first and then slimming back on those multiple times a day routes. So think SFO to somewhere in Southern California like LAX. They might be cutting those back and then using a bigger plane. Airlines that we reached out to today say they are really trying to find a path forward, but are calling on the government to end this shutdown. Meantime, if you are flying out this weekend, here's some advice from an aviation expert. They say keep in touch with your carrier, if that means getting on their website or also getting their app to get the most up-to-date information about your flight status. Good luck.
Day 36 of the government shutdown. It's now the longest in U.S. history, and there is some breaking news. We are just learning that thousands of flights could be canceled starting on Friday. So basically what's happening is airports across the country are seeing major staffing shortages when it comes to air traffic controllers, TSA workers. So the FAA has made the decision to cut the number of flights by 10% at 40 major airports across the country. Now, 10% may not sound like a lot, but we're talking thousands of flights every single day in America. So what this means is that thousands of flights could be canceled, impacting hundreds of thousands of Americans who are gearing up to travel for not only Veterans Day, but the busy holiday season. So I asked the Transportation Secretary just how this is going to affect so many Americans at home, and here's what he told me.
Will this mean practically for air travel? Is this going to lead to more flight delays, more cancellations?
Well, I think it's going to lead to more cancellations. We're going to work with the airlines.
And why are those air traffic controllers and FAA workers calling out sick? Well, they are working without pay. They have not gotten paid for 36 days. Just take a listen to what one FAA worker and union rep told me.
We're petrified. We are concerned.
You were already short-staffed.
Correct.
And how much worse has the shutdown made it?
It's exponentially made it worse because we're exhausted now.
And how much does that compromise air safety?
That compromise goes up every single day.
Heads up, if you've got a flight anywhere in the U.S. coming up. The FAA just announced that air traffic across 40 major U.S. airports will be reduced by 10% starting this Friday morning, November 7th. And this is all because of the government shutdown. At this point, air traffic controllers have been working unpaid since October 1st. And we've seen delays at airports across the country as some of them are calling out because they can no longer afford to come to work and not get paid. In some places, it's caused staffing shortages. And now the system is getting stretched so thin that the FAA says that they're going to have to slow things down before things get unsafe. Real quick, I'm Janelle Ford. I am a journalist based in Dallas. FAA Administrator Brian Bedford and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy held a press conference today. They say they're meeting with airline execs to figure out which airports are going to be affected. We are supposed to get that full list tomorrow, which is Thursday, November 6th. But this move is going to impact thousands of flights nationwide. We're talking delays, cancellations, the works. So if you've got travel plans coming up, especially this weekend, double check your flight status now and constantly. This could get really chaotic, really fast, and I'll post more updates as soon as that airport list drops.
If you have a flight this Friday, you are not going to be happy about what I'm about to tell you. Because of this government shutdown, the FAA just announced on Friday it will cut flight capacity by 10% at 40 major airports across this country. That is going to impact between 3,500 to 4,000 flights nationwide.
I anticipate there will be additional disruptions. There will be frustration. We are working with the airlines. They're going to work with passengers. But in the end, our sole role is to make sure that we keep this airspace as safe as possible.
I know you're going to ask which airports are affected, and right now we don't know. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says the FAA wants to let the airlines know this is coming first, but those affected airports will be released to the rest of us tomorrow.
This is data-based. This is not based on what airline travels, has more flights out of what location. This is about where's the pressure and how do we alleviate the pressure.
What pressure? What is he talking about? Well, it's actually something I've been warning about since the beginning of this government shutdown more than a month ago. Because the air traffic controllers are federal employees who are essential, and by the way, we're already dealing with horrendous staffing shortages and clunky, old, outdated equipment. They are now, because of this government shutdown, also having to deal with showing up for a very stressful job and receiving $0 in their paycheck. As you would expect, many of them are calling out sick or just not showing up because they don't have the funds to get childcare, or they need to work another job to actually pay their bills. And the ones who are showing up, according to the Transportation Secretary, are working crazy long hours. And when these air traffic controllers don't show up to work, or they're really tired from working those really long hours, that puts tremendous pressure on the entire air travel industry, because those controllers are the ones who ensure that your plane gets from point A to point B safely. Now, as I've been reporting, the last government shutdown, which also happened during Trump's last term, ended because of air travel issues. So it is very possible that this one will end because of the very same reason. But it probably won't end before these airline cuts start on Friday. I'll keep you posted on which airports are going to be affected.
Starting Friday morning, the FAA will cut thousands of flights nationwide, a 10% reduction at 40 of their busiest airports due to the impact of the ongoing government shutdown. The Department of Transportation says the decision is based on safety, warning that staffing shortages and fatigue among air traffic controllers could lead to critical mistakes if left unchecked.
Many of the same ones who show up continue to show up. Some of those who don't show up continue to not show up, which means we have those who come to work. They're working longer hours. They're working more days. And that's some of the pressure that we're seeing on them. And we want to alleviate that pressure before it would become an issue.
Transportation officials stressing this is a proactive approach to ensure the safety of their airspace. They plan to name the 40 airports tomorrow and say they could increase or decrease the reduction depending on the need.
About 13,000 air traffic controllers have been working without pay for weeks, and many have been forced to get a second job to make ends meet.
I think that is what is adding to the angst and uncertainty for the controllers, is not knowing when the end's going to be in sight. It's real easy to say you're going to miss 1 or 2 paychecks. You'll get that money back. You're going to be okay. But no one knows when their paychecks are going to come.
Regional Vice President of the Western Pacific National Air Traffic Controllers Association, Joel Ortiz, says this reduction in flights will help ease the workload for the controllers who are still able to show up. Officials say they will start working with the 40 airports over the next 48 hours to discuss how this will be implemented.
We want to make sure that planes get where they need to go for maintenance and crews get to where they need to be as we start to implement this drawdown in service, but it will be restricted to these 40 high volume traffic markets We're going to ask the airlines to work with us collaboratively to reduce their schedules.
And with no end in sight for the shutdown, some passengers are already canceling their holiday travel plans.
My brother lives on the East Coast, and usually he does Thanksgiving, but I have vetoed and protested this year and will not make it happen, sadly.
I tell you what, if you got half a brain, you better cancel these flights because I don't think this is going to end, you know? And I was looking at an article this morning because the Republicans took a big beating in the last elections a few nights ago. One of the reasons why they lost is the government shutdown. So the Democrats are saying they are not coming to the negotiating table because they know the longer this goes on, the worse it is for the Republicans. All a political theater, right? Yeah. So y'all, please be careful out there. And I pray you and no one in your family got to travel by air anytime soon. Because look, at the end of the day, nobody wants to work for free. Nobody. That's nothing but slavery. And nobody wants to get up and work long hours and just to be empty-handed. No paycheck coming. And a president that's sitting around saying you don't deserve back pay. I tell you what, if it was me, I sure wouldn't be getting up. Curly Locks, thank you for the super sticker and your support for my channel. And Mr. Soulful, clear the airspace and make room for the chariots of Yah. Yea, all praises to the Most High. Yes, I agree with that. I would much rather look up and see the chariots, to be honest with you. And thank you for your support for my channel. So, y'all, my next live stream will be at 4:45. I sure hope to see you. If not, have a wonderful afternoon. Shalom, family.